student.
Professor Sachs, if I could come in here. This is the one man that you keep referring to was a man chosen by the Americans. And the joke on social media is that if the US saw what was happening in the US would invade the US to save it from itself. And whatever Trump is doing is not really a surprise. He's been around, maybe more emboldened this time, but he always said what he was going to do, and he's doing that. And the American voter has put him in the White House. With the incidents that you mentioned, would you say that America today is a backsliding democracy?
We once had a little joke that said, why is the U.S. the only country that never had a coup? And the answer is because it doesn't have an American embassy. Think about it. Anyway, maybe we've had a coup now. We don't know. We don't know how things will actually play out. It's quite worrisome. Yes, Americans voted for Donald Trump. That's true. But Americans voted for Donald Trump under a constitution and a rule of law, not to be ruled by executive decree, which in any event is illegal under our system of government. So we are really in a test right now whether a president can just declare emergency after emergency after emergency, and these have no relevance as emergencies. This is trade policy, ladies and gentlemen. This isn't emergencies. This isn't a hurricane. This isn't a disaster. This is normal economics, which is why we have a Congress and a Constitution. And so, yes, this is absolutely unprecedented and dangerous for everybody, dangerous for the world. And this, unfortunately, is our little bit of our grim situation right now.
Let's talk about India. You've praised India's economic growth in the past, which has happened, and India thrived thanks to globalization. Do you believe that globalization can survive this protectionist turn that Washington has taken?
First of all, India is doing wonderfully, and it doesn't surprise me because I've watched India in its takeoff, and I've been privileged to be coming to India now for 46 years. So I've watched a lot of India's remarkable achievement. I'll tell you, it's an old story, but for me, it's a very vivid story. When I first came to India with my girlfriend, who's now my wife of 45 years, I carried a book in my backpack by Gunnar Myrdal called The Asian Drama. He was the Nobel Swedish laureate who wrote about Asia. And of course, he was the one that said India could never achieve economic growth, that it was doomed to what was euphemistically called the Hindu growth rate of 2% per year. And this was my first book as I roamed India for a month in 1979, trying to understand this. Of course, I never believed this, and I never believed that any country is somehow condemned to poverty or doomed to backwardness. It's the opposite of what real economics shows. We are in an age of convergence right now. We're in an age where countries are catching up for lost time. India, as you know, was the second or the first largest economy in the world forever, for hundreds and hundreds of years, until, if I could say, the British arrived and did their job for quite a while. I do have a theory in life that all of today's challenges at the core have a British story to them, whether it's the Middle East or whether it's some other place, whether it's China too, because the British showed up in 1839 to demand the right to export opium to China, the opposite of the fentanyl emergency and so forth. In any event, India and China fell far behind, and they fell far behind until independence. And independence enabled catching up. And both started a rapid catching up after the 1980s, China first in 1978, India, I would say, in the early 1990s, and now the rate is very robust, and India will become the second largest economy of the world, overtaking the United States in 10 or 15 years. It will become probably the largest economy in the world in the second half of the 21st century. You're going to have the most people by a wide number, by the way, so this will be the major economy of the world. Advanced, high income, high tech. This is what's happening step by step, and your government's doing a very good job of promoting it, I would add. So in this sense, it's all very positive. And it should help to explain the weirdness going on in the United States, because the U.S. is in a kind of neurotic reaction. The neurosis is that the United States expected to be number one forever. This is the basic point. China ruptured that illusion, so Americans hate China. They hate China. How dare you be a bigger economy than the United States? This violates every rule according to American thinking. And they will come to resent India, I'm sorry to tell you, as you overtake the United States too. Just a little bit of friendly caution to you, because the American mindset cannot understand this as a big world, and other countries are more populous and they're not being held back. And the United States is only 335 million people, a little bit bigger than Uttar Pradesh, but not so much bigger. And so it can't be the biggest country in the biggest economy in the world. It's not even possible in a world where technology is everywhere, where skills are everywhere, where the ability to innovate is everywhere. But this is driving the Americans crazy, and it's driving the Americans crazy, especially about China. Don't be pulled into it. I know India and China have their own issues, but settle them, because between the two of you, you're 40% of the world population, and you could actually help to run a very decent world together. Thank you.
Let's talk about the war in Ukraine. And we know that the US president is giving the Europeans a hard time, and they've been sidelined. He's talking to Putin directly, who is tarrying and not taking a peace deal. Do you think that the current US president is our best bet to end the war? And if Putin does not take his deal, will Trump be inclined to use force?
The war in Ukraine was a terrible debacle that the United States sadly walked into over a 30-year period by expanding NATO, despite Russia's continuing objections. Don't come closer to our border, don't come closer to our border. I know it. I was President Gorbachev's on his economic advisory team 36 years ago. I was President Yeltsin's economic advisor. I was Ukraine's economic advisor to President Kuchma, so I know both sides. The basic point was Russia wanted some space so that the United States wasn't pushing its missile systems, its Aegis missiles, its military bases right up against Russia's borders. But the United States said, we go where we want, when we want, where we want, how we want, and the war finally ensued. The war could have ended in 2022. Ukraine and Russia were about to sign a peace agreement based on neutrality for Ukraine. But the United States said, no, 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 we want military bases, we want NATO there, don't sign the agreement. So Ukraine continued to fight. So will Trump end this? He could end this. He just has to say very clearly, publicly, explicitly, NATO will not enlarge to Ukraine. That is over. We will not be next to Russia, pushing ourselves into Russia's front yard, basically. And if the U.S. does this, there will be peace in Ukraine, because the war will end. It's been a war over NATO enlargement. The war will end on that basis. Unfortunately, President Biden insisted to the last day NATO will expand to Ukraine. President Trump knows it's not right, but he hasn't quite said it yet. So we're close to the war ending, but we're not quite there yet.